Guys, what's going on? This is Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. Thank you for joining me, guys. Today we're going to talk about, well, before we get to what we're going to talk about, I'm sure the majority of you watching the channel right now, if you are early game, just started out maybe a month, 2, 3, 4 months ago, you're probably struggling or working on completing level 20 dungeons, Spider's Den most importantly, to get those accessories to help you be able to, contend in the other dungeons. Or maybe you've been playing the game for a while now, you've already cleared level 20 dungeons, you're working on getting better gear and upgrading your champions to eventually, farm and unlock Lydia and unlock every or 63 stars in every single faction crypt. Or maybe you're like everybody in the world right now and you're struggling on Doom Tower. Now, I've spent a lot of money on this game, I have a lot of champions, I have really good artifacts, I spent a lot of time farming, and I've, worked hard on strategy in terms of the synergy on my teams, and even me, the silver shortage is hurting on Doom Tower, harkening back to a video a few days ago here on the channel. Man, silver shortage is real, and it feels disgusting. It feels almost punitive when we go to switch artifacts on champions, and it costs so much silver. 100k, 50k, 200k silver to swap out an artifact Plarium. Come on, man. When I interview the community manager again, the #1 question that I ask her, the first question is going to be about silver, maybe #2 about dupes, maybe #3 about, I don't know, what is this? When is this coming to the game, this hidden void tower or whatever it is, and what is that going to be for? But anyway, point I'm trying to make here, guys, is you're probably struggling somewhere. You probably feel like you've hit a plateau somewhere inside the game, and I want to give you guys something to think about in today's video. I've selected about 10 or so champions of all rarities to help really bolster up your survivability and help you kind of clear that plateau and bust through to another level of progression no matter where you're focused on. So what are these champions? Well, they're defense-based damage dealers. These are not all support champions, although a couple of them will have some support in their kit, but these are champions that actually put out a decent amount of damage, and they're easier to build and keep alive. Why are they easier to build? Well, let's talk about the trifecta of a defensive-based damage dealer. You can have a defensive aura champion like Mistress of Hymns, like Tyrell, like Sepulture Sentinel as a team lead. A leader on your team that gives defense in all battles. Sandlash Survivor's another one. Those are epics. There's also Executioner, who has it in all battles for rare. There is Apothecary, who has 21% in dungeons for a rare champion. But having a defensive aura lead on your teams is going to be important with this strategy. And even more important than that, having a champion that gives an increased defense by 60% is going to be imperative. Now, there's Doomscreech. There's Marked for rare champions that give a plus 60% defense. There's also Thanasil in Mausoleum Mage for epic champions. Again, all on a 3-turn cooldown, all 4 of those champions with an increased defense. So think about it. They're not dying because you're building a ton of defense on them. They're nuking harder because you're building a ton of defense on them. They're going to have a defensive aura lead, giving you extra defense, ergo extra survivability, ergo extra damage. And then you're going to have the increased defense. That's 60% defense, also 60% increased damage, essentially. Well, it's not a direct correlation, but you guys get it. Kind of like increase attack by 50%. Instead, we're getting more defense, we're staying alive longer, and we're doing more damage. It's really easy to build a team, kind of taking all those components in. So include a couple champions from the list that we're going to give today, and then include a defensive aura, and then include a plus defense percentage. Buff champion on your team, you're going to be looking great. I promise you guys, it's going to make a big difference on your progression. This is something that's going to take a while. You're going to have to invest in these champions, and today we're going to talk about all those champions. But I want to give, I was going through the multipliers because I wanted to pick, good nukers for you guys, right? And man, where even is she, dude? She's the newest champion, and I'm an idiot. I forgot what rarity, or excuse me, what faction she's even in. But what is Thea? What is Thea again? She looks like a dark elf. Dude, where is she? Night Revenant? Night Revenant. My bad. Thea the Tomb Angel. Just totally apropos of absolutely nothing, guys. Sorry for interjecting with this random tidbit in a video that has nothing to do with this. But I was looking at the multipliers to get good defensive nukers for this video. And dude, Hex Reaper, her A2, just FYI, is now the highest multiplier, the hardest hitting nuke inside the entire game with over 10 multipliers. Now, obviously, that is, with the exception of damage based on max HP, which depends on, who has the max HP that you're attacking and how much HP they have. But this Hex Reaper is insane. It's a 3.5 multiplier up to 300% extra damage. So this is the new strongest nuke in the game, a Doom Tower champion. So really cool to see her. Once we unlock her, I'll certainly do a guide on her. Anyway, guys, let's talk about some defensive-based champions that you guys should be looking out for. And let's start with, the rare. It's actually Chevalier. He has the highest, believe it or not, a rare champion, including every champion in the game defense base. He has the highest multiplier on any skill in the game, and it is actually his Stern Rebuke. His A2 on a 3-turn cooldown attacks one enemy, has a 75% chance of placing a stun debuff for 1 turn. He's a defensive-based champion. This, I believe, has a 7 multiplier on it. Dude, that is really, really insane. Also has an increased defense and continuous heal buff on all allies for 2 turns, so it's kind of like 2 birds, 1 stone. Granted, it's the weak version of the increased defense, but he's a champion worth looking at. One enemy 2 times, has a 20% chance of repeating the attack, and will ignore block damage and shield on his hack through his A1. Chevalier is a champion that no one really talks about that much, but he definitely deserves a nod because for a rare champion, man, he is worth talking about because he hits so incredibly hard. So next up, let's go to, I'm just going to kind of go all over the place here, guys, in terms of champions. We're going to cover a few legendaries. We're going to talk about a few epics and rares all in this video. Ignatius is a champion that I just pulled somewhat recently. I just finished building him up, and he has very hard-hitting multipliers. He has a 4.9 on his A2 and a 5.3 on his A3. That means he hits hard, and it's based on defense, and he brings a lot of other utility to the game, right? He has Provoke on an AoE at 75% chance, and then he has a HP burn that cannot be resisted on a 5-turn cooldown on turn 2 Ash. I like that name for some reason. But yeah, man, Ignatius is a beast because he puts out a ton of damage and is based off of HP. He also, or excuse me, defense. And he also has ally defense in all battles. He has that aura that you're looking for. Granted, he's a legendary, a little bit tougher to get, but definitely a champion worth looking at, worth considering. Let's go to one of the more obvious champions on our list, and that's going to be Tyrell. Tyrell is an oldie, old school OP epic champion. He has the decreased defense on a 4-turn cooldown and AoE. He also has a pretty hard-hitting preemptive strike. Those of you who play Tyrell know that Tyrell actually hits pretty hard. So he's a defense-based champion with a defensive aura, with a pretty decent defense base stat of 1343, so it scales pretty well as well with all right multipliers. He's not your main damage dealer, but he's certainly a character that even beyond just his decreased defense, he can bring a lot to the table and actually put out some serious damage. He also has the decreased attack on his A1, so certainly a champion worth looking at. You guys already know about Tyrell though, right? Let's talk about a champion that I am a pretty big fan of. I have been for a long time, and it is none other than, I'm seeing like all the champions I want to talk about today, and I'm going out of order. Umbral Enchantress. Umbral Enchantress, again, hard-hitting champion that brings a lot more to the table, and this is the case with a lot of defensive-based champions in the game. They're bringing more than just hitting hard, and that is definitely the case with Umbral Enchantress. A Void, Demon Spawn, epic champion, attacks one enemy, damage increases as current HP decreases, which is good because she's going to have low HP a lot because of her A3. On her AT, it's A2, it's an AoE attack, has a 100% chance of placing a block buffs, and of course, Undying Evil, the ability that she is known for. It puts all of her skills on cooldown for 5 turns, but it also places a guaranteed provoke, 100% I should say, AoE provoke for 2 turns, which is really nice to have the AoE provoke on 2 turns as opposed to most champions where it's just 1 turn on the provoke. And both of these abilities hit pretty hard. Really cool champion to invest in. She serves a lot of utility inside the game. And next up, I want to stay with the Demon Spawn champions and go right over here to Padma. Padma is another beast. Her A3 hits incredibly hard. Appropriate attacks one enemy, removes all buffs from the target and places them on this champion on a 3-turn cooldown when booked. Again, a very, very hard-hitting ability, and she's, removing and stealing all of those buffs. On her A2, it is an AoE attack and then has a, 50% chance when booked of placing a decreased accuracy for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. Flesh Warp, obviously an AoE attack, not nearly as hard hitting as Appropriate, but still carries a decent punch to it. Padma is definitely a champion that a lot of you guys probably use if you're lucky enough to pull her. I, believe it or not, have not maxed her out. I do have her, but I think she's going to be right there next on the list. Definitely a champion. Again, damage based on defense that can put out a truckload of damage for you guys. Don't sleep on her. Let's go ahead and stay in Demon Spawn and talk about Drexthar Blood Twin, a champion that you can always farm or buy fragments from in the Bazaar. And of course, on the A1, he has that 3-time hitter, so obviously a Giant Slayer, candidate in terms of tier 6 masteries. Has an HP burn for 2 turns on the A1. Heals his champion by 20% of the damage inflicted if the target is under HP burn. On the A2, it's an AoE attack. Has a 60% chance of placing a provoke for 1 turn. This increases to 100% if the target's under HP burn. Also plays a decreased attack debuff for 2 turns if the provoke debuff is placed. Burning Lash, having the decreased attack and the provoke, is really, really solid on 1 3-turn cooldown ability. And those are his 2 active abilities. Has a 55, make it 65, 75% chance of placing an HP burn debuff for 2 turns on the attacker when hit. This champion's resistance increases by 10 for every enemy under HP burn debuff, stacks up to 50. This is a guy that, listen, you guys should be farming him inside the Bazaar. It might take you a few months to do so. It might take you 6 months to get him. But when you do, he's going to be incredibly valuable. Again, he's easy to build because he has almost 1400 defense, and you just build him with a lot more defense at 100% crit rate and accuracy, and you're looking really good. Like a Drexthar Blood Twin, he might not be an SSS tier legendary, but he's good and serviceable to almost everybody who's watching this video right now. Let's go ahead and talk about some of the more, supporty type damage dealers. Of course, I couldn't go a video without mentioning Scylla the Drakes, my favorite champion in the game. She has an attacks all enemies 2 times with the stun on there. So if you have Fearsome Presence Mastery on her, if you have a stun set on her, you can basically almost guarantee something over 90% stun rate on this A2, and it's hitting all enemies 2 times on a 3-turn cooldown. She also has an A1 that does damage as well, and she has the revival, of course. So, she's not a damage dealer, but she can put up 600 to 800,000 damage in a level 20 dungeon. She's a good 3rd damage dealer on your team while providing CC, providing heal, providing increased speed, providing, what else does she do? Revivals. So she brings a ton to the table. Scylla Drakes, I'm sure, is a champion that almost everybody is using if you have unlocked her through the daily login rewards. And if you're not, well, definitely use her. You guys know I've spoken so much about her, I don't feel like I need to speak about her much anymore. Martyr, another legendary champion, guys, is a defense-based champion who actually has a hard-hitting suppression ability, her A3. It's an AoE attack on a 4-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, places a decreased attack buff for 2 turns, and places a provoke buff for 1 turn, debuff for 1 turn. Dude, not only is it doing all of this stuff, decrease attack, provoke, and AoE attack, but it also hits pretty hard. So suppression is definitely an ability to look out for on one of the best champions in the game. Has a decreased defense and counterattack on a 3-turn cooldown on Bastion of Faith. Obviously, she is in a minority of Valkyrie, Martyr, and Skullcrusher. Still the only 3 champions with an AoE counterattack. With all these new champions added to the game, you'd think one of them would have an AoE counterattack. Not so. Valerian wants to keep it at 3. That's it. All right. I want to go way back to Demon Spawn because, we took a little break. We're coming back. Infernal Baroness, a defensive-based champion that I personally used when I was completing Faction Wars 21. She has a heal here on the ally with the lowest HP by 5% of the damage dealt. Now, the thing with Infernal Baroness is her A1 is an AoE attack. And guess what? So is her A2. Attacks all enemies with the decreased attack. So she's bringing the AoE decreased attack. She's bringing in AoE on her A1 with a heal of the ally with the lowest HP, and an AoE on the A2. Perfect candidate for a stun set. That's what I did. I put her in a stun set. I gave her Fearsome Presence, and I put her in stun set, Fearsome Presence, and that was it. And that's all you need. What am I even looking for? And then I did what? What exactly? Place a perfect veil buff on an ally for 3 turns on the A3, so it just appears a nice little addition to her kit. Help keep, an ally who really needs to stay alive, help keep them alive, but definitely a champion worth mentioning here. We talked about a lot of legendaries and epics here on the channel so far, on the video I should say, but I mean, we gotta talk about my guy, Shield Guard. Shield Guard is a champion who is a defense-based, uncommon champion. Because of his A2 battle stance, attacks all enemies, fills his champion's turn meter by 20% on each critical hit, on a 2-turn cooldown, damage based on defense. Yeah, dude, he can basically use his A2, and then boom, he's back at full turn meter, and then 2-turn cooldown, so he's doing battle stance constantly, can put out a lot of damage. Granted, his base defense, he is an uncommon after all, is low at 1024, but he's a rare example, or an uncommon example, of a champion you can actually build up to have high defense, do more damage, and you can actually keep him alive because he has high defense. So Shield Guards are definitely a champion worth mentioning there. Speaking of uncommons, Armager. So Armager, obviously one of the best known uncommon champions in the game, has a decreased turn meter 30% on his A1, but really on his lay to rest ability, he is defense based. You build him with a bunch of defense, again, just like Shield Guard, 947, nice and low on the defense. However, it scales off of defense and enemy max HP. Now, to be fair, has a block revive, which is great, but it scales a bit more on enemy max HP. But the fact that it's kind of based on defense first means that you can, again, just scale him to have a ton of defense, invest in some crit damage. He's easy to keep alive for an uncommon, and he'll be doing a ton of damage. It is a 1 enemy attack, not an AoE though on Armager, but I'm sure you guys are probably already well aware of Armager and what he brings to the table for you guys. Let's go over to Ogryn for a second, talk about Grush the Mangler, another champion whose damage is based off defense that brings a lot to the table. A lot of people consider Grush to be a top 5, top 10 epic in the game. I'm not sure if I rank him that high, but you can definitely make a strong case. On the AoE, on the A2, excuse me, it is an AoE attack on a 4-turn cooldown. He has the leech, by the way, on the A1, which is really solid. Has a 60, make it a 100% chance of placing a decreased attack or a decreased crit damage debuff for 2 turns. And then on the A3, attacks all enemies again. So 2 AoE attacks, damage based on defense, not incredibly hard hitting, but he can bring a lot to the table. He's hitting 2 big AoEs in his kit, along with, obviously his A1, but this has the strong version of continuous heal and an additional weak version of continuous heal if at least 1 enemy is hit with a critical hit. So basically always you're getting 2 continuous heals and 2 AoE attacks. This is a champion that can help a lot of you guys. 1321 base defense as well. Man, this guy is a solid option. I'm really glad they added him to the game. Urson Ironhide, one of the bears, doesn't get a lot of love. He's not super flashy, but on his rampaging swipe, his A3 on a 4-turn cooldown, attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of placing decreased attack for 2 turns. So a 2-turn decrease attack on a pretty decently hard-hitting AoE attack based on defense can help you out a lot as well, right? If you don't have a decrease attack debuffer on your team, this guy can make an impact for you, similar to Infernal Baroness with her AoE decrease attack. And then he has a 1 enemy 2 times, and again, his kit is not super flashy, but man, just like Infernal Baroness, I leaned heavily on Urson Ironhide in Skinwalker 21, and again, you can easily build him so he doesn't die. Note that all these champions are pretty slow. So who else did I want to talk about? Just a couple more here. We have to talk about the heaviest damage dealers out there, right? So let's go ahead and do so now. So let's start with Deathless. So Deathless has to be in this video because she has one of the hardest hitting abilities inside the game, and it is Grim Revenge. Attacks all enemies. This attack will always be critical if there are 2 or more dead allies. Damage increases according to the number of dead allies. Man, granted, there's a couple prerequisites in there, but it is damage based off defense, as is her entire kit, of course. But this ability, Grim Revenge, this AoE, if anybody's dead, for example, in the arena, it can one-shot everybody. Very, very, very hard-hitting ability in Grim Revenge on a 5-turn cooldown. Has a reflect damage buff on this champion for 2 turns, then attacks one enemy, has a 100% chance of placing a provoke, and again, damage based on defense on the A2, and again here, damage based on defense on the A1. Deathless is a champion that not a lot of people talk about, but she puts out an insanely hard-hitting AoE if anybody's dead on the team. If there's more than one people dead on the team, watch out. She's putting out an insane amount of damage. I want to talk about 2 more champions real quick, guys. It is Kaiden, a newer defense-based champion add to the game because he brings a revival to the team as well, and he puts the 50% HP and the increased defense on those allies after they're revived. Really solid to have. Has a decreased attack as well on a 3-turn cooldown on the A2, so a third option for a decreased attack champion whose damage is based off defense, and again has a provoke, albeit a pretty small chance, 30%, not bad for an A1 on his A1. That is Kaiden, and last but not least, it is another Ogryn tribe champion. So Grimskin on his A3 here attacks all enemies, has a 100% chance of removing 1 buff from each target. Actually a pretty hard-hitting and underrated ability in the game. On a 4-turn cooldown, sometimes 1 buff removal is all you need to debuff the enemy team, and of course it's a hard-hitting defense-based AoE attack. Also, his frustrating muck on his A2, another hard-hitting 3-turn cooldown ability, attacks 1 enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 70% chance, of course when booked, of placing a provoke debuff for 1 turn, has a 60% chance of placing a provoke debuff on all enemies for 1 turn if the first provoke debuff is placed. Wow, what a great ability, right? So if you land that first provoke, you put it on everybody at a 60% chance. Not too bad on a 3-turn cooldown. So this is, again, another champion with a decreased speed on the A1 who can serve multiple purposes for your team. He's not as slow as some of the other champions we talked about at 99, and his defense is actually higher than a lot of champions that we talked about at 1421. So there's a lot more defensive-based champions in the game, guys. Crimson Helm comes to mind, Captain Tamilia comes to mind, and there's a lot more kind of support-based defensive-based champions out there. I wanted to focus on champions who had AoE attacks in this video, with the exception of one or two champions that we talked about, such as Deathless. But man, I hope I gave you something to think about in terms of, again, progressing in your account, thinking a little bit outside the box, thinking about building up slowly but surely a defensive-based nuking team, a defensive-based team that can put out damage and can stay alive for you guys, because I guarantee, again, it will make a dramatic impact for you guys long-term, especially when you approach your plateau, your roadblock, where you just can't progress any further inside this game. So guys, thanks so much for watching, and as always, take care, guys.